Hey, it's Amy.
And Jacinta.
Back from Rainbow Machenko Coach.
And today we're talking how to stretch your hip flexors until you puke. Not really. We're talking our 3 favorite hip flexor stretches.
For our first hip flexor stretch today, we're going to start with one of my favorite lunge stretches against the wall. So you're going to grab a yoga block and you're going to place it the length of your foot away from the wall. From there, I'm going to place my knee on the center of the block so that I don't fall off, and I'm going to beautifully flex my toes up onto the wall and then step my other leg forward. First thing to pay attention to from here is that you're not over-arched through the lower back, because that's not going to stretch your hip flexors. An arched lower back is actually a sign of tight hip flexors. Instead, we got to think booty squeeze, core or my pelvic floor engage to try and tuck my tailbone under. Make sure you get the tuck before we then start to sneak forward as deep as we can in the lunge. Now, if you start to arch, you probably got a little bit too far for that booty strength. So instead, we're going to again come back a little bit, tuck under, and start to sink as deep as we can into the stretch from there. Now, it's also really important that we don't open out to the side, because that's also not going to stretch my hip flexor till its fullest potential. We're going to stay really, really square. So I want you to pretend you got like a set of car headlights on the front of your hips, and we're trying to keep those car headlights facing forwards. All the same time, I'm still keeping my glutes engaged. From here, I want you to watch that you don't fall forwards, because you're going to shorten your hip flexor, you're not going to stretch it. Instead, I want you to try and keep that chest pulling up nice and tall. And again, keeping both hips facing forward the entire time. From here, we're going to keep an eye on your hip level. So I'm going to bring you over to a front view now. All right, the last little thing to pay attention to is the level of your hips. We don't want to have wonky hips, so none of this. See how this side is really crunched up? This side is really stretched. My hip bones are currently sitting really wonky, and it's not going to be stretching my hip flexors to their fullest potential. So instead, we're going to try and level them up. A good way to kind of test this is to face yourself in front of a mirror, place both hands on the top of your hip bones, and then make sure as you sneak forwards, they stay the same height.
Hey friends, I'm going to show you my favorite lunge exercise that I like to do as a warm-up. This one's awesome because it makes you engage your glutes while you're stretching your hip flexor, which you should be doing anyway. So we're going to come into a nice long lunge, making sure that your knee is in line with your hip and then your foot is directly underneath your knee. So you don't want to be hinging forwards like that. It's not very good for the cartilage in your knee. So you want to be either behind or on top. Then the back leg, again, should be in line with your hip, and we're going to flex your back foot. But for this, it's kind of necessary. I'm going to push back a little bit. I'm going to think about tucking my pelvis under, squeezing that back butt cheek. I'm going to hold my hips at the same level as I try and straighten my leg. So I don't want you to push up and straighten the back leg. You've got to stay at this height. So if we're here, we cannot come higher. You can use a block to check if you are actually moving higher or not. So what I do is I just place it lightly underneath my front leg, and I'm squeezing my butt, and I know that I'm just lightly touching that, and then I'm gonna lift and make sure that I'm still lightly touching that block at the front. If I've lifted off the block, I know I lifted higher. And I'm squeezing, 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 and down. I usually do between 5 and 10 of these. As I'm doing it, you want to also make sure that the front leg is not kicking out to the side, and you're activating that booty and squeezing that thigh at the back. You're welcome. Now, Amy showed you how to do the correct hip flexor stretch technique in this position, and if you've forgotten already, go back and watch it because it's super important. The only difference here is I don't have my foot flexed. I'm going to have my foot pointed. It doesn't really make a difference. If you're more comfortable with your foot flexed, you're welcome to. I also have my foot fairly close to the wall. It's only about 10 centimeters away. You can go closer if you like. I'm going to bring my foot up in front of me, so it's in line with my hip, and it's a good step away from my body. And then I'm going to come into a nice long lunge. I'm going to use the block for balance in this one. So Amy's hip flexor stretch was cute. This one's going to have you thinking about me for days. And I'm very excited about that. So now that I've got my foot in front of my body, I want you to take it out to the side. So now I'm kind of going out wonky, yeah? I'm going to use this block here on the side, so my hand is in line with my hip. I'm going to reach this arm up over my head, so it's the opposite arm to my front leg. I'm going to squeeze my butt, and I'm going to push my hip out to the side. I'm going to hold it for 10, so I'm pushing, 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 and then I'm going to relax and come square, so body is upright, I'm facing forwards with my hips and my boobies, and I'm sinking down nice and low into a stretch. I have still got my ass squeezed. I'm always thinking about your butt, always. And then I'm going to do it again, okay? I'm going to reach the arm over, keep that chest up, and I'm going to push my hip out to the side. Now what this is doing is it's stretching this very top section of your psoas. So your psoas is one of your hip flexor muscles, and it's getting it where it joins into your lumbar spine. Okay, so I usually do 3 to 5 of these because they're quite hectic. So when you're first trying them, just start with 3 and you hold it for 10 seconds. Really think about actively pushing your hip to the side and then relax back down square. And you'll find that you should get a little bit lower, just making sure that you are squeezing that butt. If you are getting really good at this one, we can add a bit of rotation. So we're going to reach, push the hip out to the side, and I'm also going to turn my chest to the roof. Now that's a very advanced version, and I only recommend that when you're able to do a good solid 5 of these and walk the next 2 days. Have fun, friends.
Do you love that?
Do you love us?
Then you should hit the subscribe button.
And give us a thumbs up.
Do you have questions?
We love questions. Leave us the questions in the comments. See you soon.
Bye.
Fucking weirdos. I think we're great.
I think that works.
I'm having a good time.